Good morning, Unity Church of Hawaii, wherever you may be joining us from, and happy 4th of July weekend. As we heard earlier today, there is a song that is firmly planted for those of us of a certain age in our musical lexicon and in our consciousness. Burke Bacharach put the words of Hal David firmly implanted in us. This idea that what the world needs now is love, sweet love. There's some good spiritual truth in those song lyrics. It may not go quite far enough, though, to reach what we in Unity call a truth principle. It's a good stimulating point, but Unity teachings would tell us that what we need is a deeper awareness, a deeper spiritual understanding of that power that is love and how to move that energy into the world, through us and into the world, where it can have its transformational presence, where it can touch minds and hearts and shape lives anew. If you are new to Unity, listening this morning or here in our chapel, I want to give you an introduction briefly to one method that we teach for developing a greater attunement, what some have called at-one-ment with God, greater awareness of our oneness with this life-affirming energy, greater awareness of our connection, one heart to heart, one to another, that we are in the process of realizing our own Christ nature, our connection to God, this innate, holy, and sacred individual self that is the truth of our being. We emphasize and explore each month a particular spiritual power identified by our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, in the late 1800s, as a pathway to develop this connection to God, this Christ nature through which we may live effectively in the world. So from January, we began with faith, then we moved to love, then wisdom, strength, power, imagination, and here we are in July at spiritual understanding. Charles Fillmore taught that spiritual understanding, you'll love this definition, this is very typical Charles language. Spiritual understanding is the quickening of the spirit within. It is the ability of our mind to apprehend and realize the laws of thought and the relation of ideas one to another. When you're writing in the late 1800s, your language has a particular character. When Charles references spirit, the quickening of the spirit within, he understood this as the action of God. God as the moving force in our universe and in our lives. We speak to that through our statement of faith. One presence, one power. Active in the universe and active in me, as me, through me. So I ad-libbed a little. I particularly appreciate Fillmore's more pragmatic description of spiritual understanding. This kind of falls into that category of, if I had $1 for every time, listen to this wisdom. There are two ways of getting spiritual understanding. One is by following the guidance of spirit that dwells within, and the other is to go blindly ahead and learn by hard experience. I have a lot of graduation from that school of hard experience in my life. The words of King Solomon in the Bible point to the value of developing this particular spiritual power. Understanding. Proverbs is commonly thought to have been composed as a collection of wisdom sayings by this king, revered for his wisdom in ruling Israel prior to the advent of the Christian era. There are other authors that scholars also say contributed to this wisdom. It's a set of life hack rules that can have use for us right now. And I've chosen a particular passage, the beginning of chapter 2 from Proverbs. My son or my child, If you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, indeed, if you will call out for insight and cry aloud for this understanding, and if you look for it as if for silver, and search for it as if for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord, and you will find the knowledge of God within. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield for those who walk in blamelessness. For he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your mind. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. A lot of the wisdom in the Bible sort of seems to be packaged in riddles, parables, words that we have to pull the threads apart for more clarity to understand. But I think Proverbs is crystal clear. My only caveat to this is the phrase, the fear of the Lord. For me, that harkens back to my childhood religion and sort of why I left it, to find something, a path that was closer to my own understanding. But fear of the Lord can be understood as respect for, reverence, indeed, even understanding of our relationship to this energy, this creative force, the moving action in the universe. So how do we deepen our spiritual understanding? First, we come to know what understanding means in this context. It's a threefold activity within our lives. It isn't just a thought process. Spiritual work is into action. Just as God is the acting force of the universe, we are meant to put these principles into action in our lives and live from them. So our spiritual deepening and understanding is enabled by three actions of our mind, connected to God mind, through awareness. These three actions are comprehension, realization, and insight. Comprehension is the intellectual capacity, the human part of spiritual understanding. We utilize our intellect and our mind. It is our ability to discover the connections in our experiences, the linkages between our thoughts and our feelings. This is true feelings, not emotional reactions to things, but the underlying feeling nature that is stirred up in our living activities. We are looking for the linkages between the messages of our body wisdom. Literally, if God is resident within us, then our bodies hold this infinite wisdom to be released for our good and the good of our path in this life. So we look for those messages in our own body wisdom and in our habitual habits and behaviors, maybe that don't always work out to our highest good. The body has wisdom to redirect our path into useful directions. We are looking for linkages between conditioned patterns of being that we have established across our lifetime, maybe that got built into us when we were young, and our accumulated belief systems. Conditioned patterns and our accumulated belief systems, what we might refer to as our own personal BS. And the greater truth of the God principle alive within us. When we make these observations in our lives, when we study our own life, its events and our reactions, our behavior and the results that came, then we can make the connections that serve us and lead us to our next good choice. Comprehension, the intellectual aspect of a deeper spiritual understanding. The next place we take our search for understanding is in realization, which is our capacity for sudden awareness and actually taking on this greater wisdom so that we can live from its truth in our lives. It's a little bit like the phrase, an overnight success, this sudden awareness. Overnight success usually follows after years of lots of applied labor and effort. Well, in our realization, we have been seeding the field of our consciousness through whatever religious study, through our study of the Bible and spiritual wisdom, through prayer and meditation. We are anchoring ourselves and searching for this deeper truth so that it becomes the foundation of our thoughts and our actions, our moving in life. It may come about suddenly, and it also can build slowly until it just pops up into our awareness. I imagine most of us have had the experience of awakening from a dream with such an understanding, such a concept of clarity about something that was going on in your life. Charles Fillmore taught that dreams are a useful tool for reaching to this spiritual understanding, to accessing our deeper inner wisdom, both the wisdom of our body and the wisdom of God, to lead us, to provide us guidance in whatever is going on in our life. So when I read that some number of years ago, my regular process is if I'm working on some question, I will, right before I go to sleep, let that question be my last conscious thought, asking this action of spirit, this movement of God within my mind to percolate through the night so that I wake up with the answer. It has not yet let me down. Sometimes that sudden awareness takes a while in process before I can hear the answer that serves me best. I need that preparation to reach into the process of realization. Perhaps you know it because sometimes you're, listening to the radio or you're driving your car with a friend and they say something that is so clear that the hairs raise up on your arm. You get chicken skin. A chill runs down your spine, not unlike you may have experienced as I did as Ralph and Dawn blended in that song, Let Freedom Ring. When your body gives you a signal, this is the wisdom of God opening in your mind. It brings you a new channel of thought, that realization of, oh, I know just where I'm going next. Sensing something new that seemed to come from nowhere. Out of the blue is one of my favorite synonyms for God. This is how Mr. Fillmore describes this process of searching for realization. He wrote, "We sometimes discover within ourselves a flow of thought that has been evolved independently of the reasoning process, and we are puzzled about its origin, and we are puzzled about its safety as a guide. In its beginnings, this seemingly strange source of knowledge is turned aside as a daydream. Again, it seems a distant voice, an echo of something we may have heard or read previously and then let go of. One should give attention to this unusual and usually faint whispering of spirit within. It is the development in our soul of a greater capacity to know our own divine self and to understand the purpose of creation." A lofty mission to understand the purpose of creation and especially to know our own holy and sacred self. And then we come to insight, which is the application of understanding, putting it into use in our life, especially those moments when we are stubbing our toe on some misunderstanding, some event that is causing us turmoil or difficulty or a sense of disconnect or challenge. This is how we put the realizations that occur to us in our lives, letting those realizations, allowing them to drive us to an insight about how to approach specific circumstances or situations. This is definitely not the intellectual part of the process. It may seem mystical. It may seem, indeed, out of the blue. It may seem startling. But as Mr. Fillmore invites us, pay attention to this and use this discernment to open doors of wisdom in your path. This is particularly the realm of blending fundamental sources of our perception, this activity of the mind and of the heart. Mr. Fillmore regarded the heart as a second brain, perhaps the one with the greater wisdom, the seat of God's spiritual wisdom within us. So it does indeed behoove us to be able to cultivate connection with this activity of God within us and around us. Interestingly enough, in contemporary times, the HeartMath Institute has confirmed this idea through their 25 years of research, and they posit that the heart may be the real guiding brain of our existence, of our experience, of our life, of our body, of our life. I dropped that name, HeartMath Institute, just as a nugget today, offering you, dangling for you, that idea of how science seems to have confirmed spiritual wisdom in this particular instance. And I invite you to do your own research this week. Just Google HeartMath Institute. You can go down a rabbit hole to your heart's content on the idea of how the heart is truly the center of our divine nature, as well as the life pump of our physical experience. So we have these three facets: insight, prompted by realization, prodded by the intellectual comprehension, the analysis we might do about what's going on in our life. Sometimes when you are looking for answers, life just lays the gift right at your feet. I'm always looking for an interesting story to illustrate my talks on Sunday morning, some personal experience that we can all relate to, that's real world, real life. I absolutely believe in the power of biblical wisdom, but sometimes it can feel esoteric or removed from our lives, and we need that confirmation that others are on the path, sharing this journey with us, and there is this opening of knowing through watching it out there and then saying, oh, I see how that operates. I can take that on board. Our friends in the recovery community use this aphorism: if you spot it, you got it. Me? Yes. So my story came from my experience flying home from California on Friday. I had an Uber driver pick me up in Redondo Beach to deliver me to the Long Beach airport. And I've started to fly back and forth in and out of Long Beach because it's so very convenient, Kathy Kaiser. So very convenient as compared to traveling in and out of LAX into that area. And this young man greeted me when he pulled up, said, no, Miss Margie, let me take care of all that luggage. You just take a seat in the back of the car and you get comfortable. There's water there, there's Kleenex, there's whatever you need. It's right there. I'll take care of this. And so I sat down in comfort, and he got in the car and proceeded to talk to me about life as consciousness, life as spirit. And I said, why, Terrell, you are talking my language today. And he said, well, I have to be focused in this area of life because my girlfriend and I have just learned that we are going to be parents. And And I am really impacted by that. And I've been looking at my own life to see what it is that I might need to be aware of as these months unfold before our child. I want to be prepared when that daughter of mine comes into this world. He was experiencing comprehension. And as he talked more with me about his experience in this conversation extended, he was telling me that growing up in Belize, he had a strong, solidly grounded, spiritually attuned woman for his mother. And he grew up in a household where his father was a strong figure of influence for positive life. But as he grew up, as he matured, and he got into one relationship that fell apart, and now he's in this relationship, and he is realizing that the examples he had in his own family growing up, he had a strong father figure and influence. He had an important influence in his mother. He had a strong father, but he realized his mother didn't have, in his words, a good husband. Realizing that he was not necessarily at this moment equipped to be the partner to have the partnership that he and his girlfriend could successfully welcome this child and effectively, with a spiritual connection, raise their daughter in the way they imagined for her greater good. Bringing her into this particular world right now, and how do you transcend all of its difficulties? He realized that he was not fully trained and he had work to do. Didn't learn this stuff in school, nor in college or graduate school, but he knew it was his journey to make. And so he came to that insight that this was the work of being prepared in 6 months for his daughter's birth, to be the kind of partner with his girlfriend in the relationship that set a solid ground of spiritual consciousness and awareness in which his daughter could arrive and be raised and bring in the best qualities of both his father and his mother, making up for the shortcomings of what he didn't learn, hoping to do better as a parent, to do better as a partner than the example he had had. As much as he loves and appreciates both of his parents, he could see the shortcomings and knew that they simply pointed out his work to do so that he could realize those insights into his own life story. Earlier this morning, I sent a text to a friend that began with the words, "Good morning." After I sent it, I realized that what actually showed up on the screen, autocorrected, changed whatever I mistyped, changed my words to "God's morning!" exclamation point. Autocorrect had taken my ordinary phrase and altered and aligned it to a great spiritual truth that indeed this is God's morning. This and every morning, if we are aligned in this awareness of our oneness as God, if we are in that search for the deeper wisdom and the understanding that's spoken of in Proverbs, then we are invited to know that each day it begins with God's morning, especially on this weekend, when we celebrate the birth of an elevated idea of human aspiration collectively, our independence from any source other than our own. May we acknowledge that individually as well, that our freedom comes to us from this source. Our true independence arises from this source of God within us. I also invite you to give God the power of autocorrect in your life as you search for understanding and truth to guide your life, to lead you to that inner knowing of who you are that sets you in a path of being ready for whatever life brings you. autocorrect your way into a deeper spiritual understanding through God's presence in your everyday life. I invite you to take a deep breath with me and center in this idea of the presence of God in you. Claim right here, right now, that you are in God's morning. You are in God's day. You are in God's life that is yours. Breathe. And attune to this deeper awareness that God is the moving force of energy and action in your life, morning and all day through. Allow that activity to guide your search for wisdom. Make use of your intellectual gift, your capacity to understand that the universe operates in a field of God's divine law, God's divine wisdom. Realize your place in that sphere of divine influence. Allow that energy to move you in harmony with what is, to guide and direct your steps, to bring you the insights that help you evolve into who you are called to be, allowing the God of your being to have its truth alive in you, lived as you. Breathe. Make use of this truth that the true brain that guides us resides in our heart. And as you breathe each breath, imagine your air goes into your heart first, then to your lungs and circulates through your body. And as it circulates, that oxygen, that breath, that collects up anything unlike this frequency that is God, this frequency of truth within you, and carries it out on your exhalation. Breathe in the truth of God and the truth of who you are, and exhale anything else, so that you are in the process of becoming and realizing the truth. We take this idea of deep truth, that God is the energy moving the universe and moving our lives. I invite you to make it personal. If you like to choose, if you so choose, put your hand on your heart and just speak this inner wisdom. God is the moving force in the universe. And God is the energy moving in, as, and through my life. God is the moving force of the universe, and God moves in my life through comprehension, realization, and my insight, bringing me to a deeper truth and a deeper understanding. And we rest in this idea in the silence.